The will of change is in us. It's free will. And at once we have the free will to change, it's only we who are the jailers against possibility. No one else.
But JZ, we're talking about the past, and then we're talking about the future. And I mean, isn't looking at the past and then projecting into the future? I mean, aren't those kind of the two sides of the same coin? What about being in the present moment?
Are you ever in the present moment?
Briefly, occasionally.
Right. And that's honest, because we actually, our brain is always functioning, So whatever occupies our frontal lobe becomes law. I mean, it's sort of the observational point possibility, or same-o, same-o. The future is something we haven't lived. And in order to obtain it, we have to enter a state of intentional focus on the architecture, the scaffolding of the day. This is what we want. This is how we focus it in so it can be observed into reality. That moment is actually a vacuum state. The now doesn't exist in the arrow of time. I mean, the arrow of time doesn't have a now in it. It's progressive. It's ongoing. There is no pause unless it's an intentional pause or it's a shocking pause. But it's a vacuum state. And a vacuum state exists outside of time, which is exactly where the quantum field exists, in a vacuum state. So when we live in the now, we're living in a continuous sort of state of observation. We are keenly aware. We're self-correcting things we don't want, and we're embracing the things we do. And the future, which we now move back into time, has now been changed into implementing that. Now you think better, now you see better, now you feel better, and yes, you feel as if you are onto something big. All the opportunities in your life come only when you open up to them. So the now is not a time state. It's outside of time. It's a vacuum state. Time, is just an arrow. It's moving forward. Do we want the arrow to continue to replicate the past? You see?
Mm-hmm. I'm curious how much, you asked me much time I spend in the now. I mean, you've been doing this work for longer than I've been alive. So how much time do you spend in the now versus working on the future?
Well, this is what we learn to do. And you can't do this unless you want to do it. I couldn't leave my body unless I was present. And it took a while for me to learn how to do that. I came up with an idea about creating a new neighborhood. I wanted to go live in my brain. I wanted to go be without illness. I wanted to be without all of the things that were yesterday's news in my life. And I created the architecture of it. And it was just really about 4 simple sentences that I began, and I said, I'm going to move. I'm going to turn the lights out my personality. I'm going to move. I want to have these other experiences, because as long as I'm in my past, I don't get them. And so I wrote out, I said, I have to create the architecture, God, the great architect. I have to create the architecture. And so the architecture, or the bones of the change, would have to start with 4 sentences, very small, and they would always have to include the word always, to recognize that information and that possibility is not only in my DNA, but it's in my consciousness and energy somewhere in my brain. And, I'm open to that. So I did that, and I spent about every day self-correcting meaning I'd stop with a thought that wasn't productive, that was way too familiar, and I would reinsert this information. The hippocampus in our brain is actually where small neurons are born. That's where the baby seeds of neurons are born. When we have new thoughts, we grow new neurons. If we don't have new thoughts, we don't grow new neurons. It takes about 29 days for each one of these sentences I said to actually be a neurological possibility, and interestingly goes into deeper parts of the brain, to access that highway of information of 7 different levels of consciousness and energy, so that then that becomes observationally what's going on with me every day. And it started working right away. 29 days later, it was I thought as this scaffolding. Within 6 months, I had become it. And so, meaning that it's simple to do. This is not hard. It's not over anyone's intellect to do. The heart of the matter is, do you want to do this? And anyone listening to you now can simply start by creating their day. And the way they create their day is they just write down, this day, I have always been a genius. Okay, laughable, but let's do it, because what else are you going to do today? I've always been filled with radiant health. Yes, you have bad hips, you have bad knees. Yes, but let's do this. Let's let mind lead the way for a period of neurological time, which is about 29 days, to grow the neurons in our brain that absolutely can access that and allow our DNA to start taking charge of our body. And in the meantime, we're babysitting this. We're standing up for this new possibility against doubt, which comes not from other people, it comes from ourselves. And so you have to be wanting to do it. You could say, this day, I am filled with joy. I've always been filled with joy. So you've been depressed, you take medications, start today. It could be, I want a new job, I want a new house. It could be anything. I have always had fabulous wealth, and you're poor as a church mouse. But this is how we begin to change our situation, and what makes us a divine person is that we have the right, and we fundamentally are composites that all work together to bring about an idea into our living system. So how much do I do this? All the time. And do I understand that the now is different in time? Yes, I do. And yes, I get up every morning. I create my day between 3 and 5 a.m. And then for the rest of the day, it's a law. This is how my day works. If I want something, I get it. I don't have to be good for people. I don't have to be bad for people. I just have to have a plan. Do you understand?
I do, yes. We've had Dr. Joe Dispenza on the show before, and he talks about creating your day. And Neville Goddard also taught about that. And I am curious about the 4 sentences. You mentioned some sentences. Are those the specific ones that you use, or are there different ones?
Well, I started out with those. And by the way, Dr. Joe Dispenza learned that from Ramtha. Mm-hmm. So it's not his idea. It was something that he was taught when he was in school. And so because he was on the Bleep, everybody thought it was his idea, but it never was his idea. It's what he knows how to do, and thank goodness he's saying that. But that's where he learned it, was at the school. Now, no one really got it like this. That I started out with because I had a health issue, and I knew that I was in a bad place. But I was wise enough through my work with Ramtha and being on the other side, I knew that I needed to occupy a different place in my brain and really construct a new personality with experiences yet to come, not on what was. What was becomes wisdom, that we know that we've already done that. We've already been there. We've already felt that way. We've already experienced that. I wanted new experiences. And so I said, I have always been radiantly healthy. It's in my genes. I mean, I said that and said that. My next sentence was, I am 30 years younger and always have been. Now, this was about 5 years ago. And I'm 69. I don't look 69. I don't have the DNA of a 69-year-old, and I don't have the telomeres of a 69-year-old. But I didn't do it for vanity. I did it for organ tissue, for regeneration. I gave a date, so I wanted to be healthy 30 years ago, at that time, 30 years younger. So at 30 years younger, I was vibrant and healthy and radiant and all sorts of things. And so I used that as an experiential wisdom. in which to say I've always been 30 years younger. And then the last thing I said, that I have been filled with the love of God. I've always been filled with the love of God, for God is all things and all people. And you can't love people until you have it in your heart. You can't love people unless you are it. And you can't understand people unless you understand you. And so, tolerance, compassion, believing in people's ability to change, or wherever they're at, is wherever they're at. I don't need to lay upon somebody else my ideas, my judgments, all the things that they're used to and struggling against. Love teaches us differently. So those were my sentences that I created that wonderful day from and began with. And as those illnesses went away miraculously, we had the doctors come to school and show the test and so on and so forth. Then I began to modify it. I grew those neurons after an insistence, and I did it in a walk. This was the other thing. The neuroplasticity open to the brain is greater, it's available greater when we're moving. And there was no science on that. That science came out 2 years after I taught this. So I do this walk, and I zone on this walk. I fix my eyes on some horizon, I zone out everything, and I just put those words in front of me. Now, my walk could also be to my bathroom. It could be to my dishwasher, and I'm self-correcting. And so pretty soon I just started thinking like this, and I knew I was getting well. I was getting younger. But not for vanity, but for health. And my compassion for my fellow beings changed dramatically.